in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace.
Well, all right. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, we're going to talk about bugout locations. Now, you guys have been listening to the show for a long time. You know, I'm not really a big fan of bugging out. Bugging out is not my play because, I mean, you can have so much more stuff stockpiled at your home and whatever. But the bottom line is, for some of us, staying and hunkering down is not an option. And I think
There's a lot of people that live in houses in areas that, for work or whatever, that aren't really ideal for when a situation gets a little out of hand.
Exactly. So what happens is, if you're in the city, right? And sometimes to make money and live the life you want to live, then you need to live in the city. Maybe you like that fast, exciting. And I got to say, I want to live my life first before being a prepper. My goal isn't to just, I'm going to survive in the apocalypse. Well, it turns out I want to survive right now. I want to enjoy and have a good life right now. And if what makes me happy is living in the city and enjoying cool things and going out to good restaurants and making big money and doing things, that's okay. If that makes you happy, that's what you should be doing. I honestly would rather not be around people.
Living in a city sounds like
right.
my personal hell, but
really doesn't sound fun to me. But
Mhm.
I get it. I get why some people want that. Some people really like the fast-paced life, and I do think that our goal shouldn't be, well, I'm going to survive the apocalypse. Well, how about we survive right now? Let's
Right.
let's go ahead and enjoy life. So that said, I understand those of you who want to live in an environment that maybe is not the best prepper environment, right? To survive the end of the world. So we wanted to do an episode and talk about that. And here we are. So there's a whole bunch of things to consider bugging out. And I think, obviously in my mind, the first thing that comes to mind is I want to go stay with a friend or a relative. I want to go stay at Aunt Susie's vineyard or Aunt whatever, somebody's farm, Uncle Tommy's farm. How about that? And whatever, you have the different places and options, or maybe, hey, my buddy has a farm. But the problem is you don't want to just be the uninvited guest who's like, yeah, I'm going to show up at,
Right.
forget
I'm
that
gonna
guy.
eat all your food and yeah.
Right. No, you want to plan ahead and say, hey, this is going to be my plan. What would you want me to stockpile and bring here? And we can mutually help each other. And that's something you want to think about. But also, we're going to dig deep into a bunch of locations you may never have thought of. Although I feel like if you watched, what's that zombie series that people like, Walking Dead?
The Walking Dead, yeah, they had
a lot of bug out locations, buses, and buildings, warehouses,
farms and prisons and everything, right?
Right. They covered everything in that one. They got kind of most of this stuff nailed down, but we're gonna dig deep. All right. So there's a couple of things you want to look for first when you're choosing a bug out location. Obviously, you're going to need to either stockpile food there, and that means you need to be able to get it there in this apocalypse situation, or you need to have it staged there, or you need to be able to grow, hunt, or kill it there, right? We need access to water. That's very important.
Right.
Shelter as far as climate control and just, keeping warm and dry, and then shelter as far as security. You need to be able to defend it.
Right. Concealment, cover, that sort of stuff. And also you want to have a place that you can have something stored there. You know what I mean? You want to have a location that
I like that.
where you can have your store, your stores at.
And you also need to think about, well, hang on, escape routes. Like in case you're overrun, you need to be able to get out of there. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, ideally you would have a place that has good visibility, from your location where you can watch other people, but they can't necessarily see you as easily. Low population would be a good idea.
I would think so, unless you got an army.
And you want to be able to have you want to be able to secure the access points to the location, whether that's cutting a tree down over the road or whatever it is, a spot that you can kind of keep your eyes on it.
Yeah, I was watching a bunch of videos and stuff related to this, get ideas, see what other people are talking about. And they were talking about, oh, if you had, a big compound on a river, that would be
Hmm.
great. And they said the cool thing with a river is you're only going to be attacked from people coming downriver. So
Right.
you only have to prepare for one way because you can float down and be silent, but coming upriver, people aren't doing that unless they got motors and whatever.
Right.
And then you hear those boats coming, and I
Hmm.
was like, oh, that makes sense. That's a smart way to look at it.
Yeah. Yep. Now some of the stuff I have here. Now, obviously, most of the time, if you're bugging out, you should have a location. You should have a cabin within a couple hours of you. You should have your stores up there, and you should be all set. But I mean, I think we're kind of talking in this situation about a scenario where you don't have a place to go, where you don't have some place set up and ready to party, and you have to leave your primary location.
But
So
I think you should think about these places and
absolutely.
kick it around in your mind now. And that's why, and kind of when you're out driving, when you're, scoping things out. And there's also things you can buy and whatever. A lot of people think, oh, I'm gonna go to the national forest and hide out, or something like that. A lot of people might have that same plan, but also, as we've mentioned on this podcast before, it's not easy to survive in the woods, especially when all the deer are gone and
Right.
so
Right. Exactly. Um, I know I always hear a lot of stuff about big box stores. I go to the big box store. I think everybody's going to go to the big box store at least until it's emptied out. Everybody's going to crash Walmart and steal as many supplies as they can before they're chased out by the next person with a gun. One of the ones that I wouldn't have thought of. I was talking to a realtor, and they had mentioned that there's hundreds of thousands of empty homes all over America, and you can look them right on the internet. Just Zillow it and see where you want to go and where you're at, and find an empty house. It's illegal, it's breaking and entering, but it'll keep you out of the weather.
there is definitely a thing to consider about the legality of it. I mean, you don't want to be the guy whose plan is I'm going to go kill people. Yeah, you
Hmm.
didn't plan. That's
Right.
not a good. I'm going to go steal somebody else's stuff and
Hmm.
that's going to be good. But there's a lot of ways I think we can work our way in to a lot of places. And
Hmm.
but I think that is future planning. Um
Right.
Planning ahead could get you into a lot of good survival, things. One thing like maybe you have a hunting lodge or sorry, like a shooting range that you
Hmm.
guys go to. And a lot of the shooting ranges have like a piece of hunting property with it. A lot of them even have, I see with a pond that, they have stocked with fish, that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. Um, what if you talk to the guys there and, what's the membership to a gun range for a year is probably not that much where it's something you could work in and you could start talking to everybody and say, hey, look, how about we plan to bug out here? We
Hmm.
all have guns and ammo and we can all stage some things and all invest a little bit to make it, something that we can have access to drinking water. Something where, all right, we have a well, but what if we set up a pump or some kind of off grid setup where if there was an EMP or something, we could still get water here for drinking? And
Hmm.
what if we all stockpiled some buckets of rice here for our family and we all agree to come here? See, then it's not a bad play. Then you can go to that compound and whatever. And this is the same thing for you're part of an Elks Lodge or, Masons or, something. Now, obviously, a lot of the Mason lodges and stuff are right in town and whatever. But, some of the I see the Moose Lodge, the Elks Lodge, the different things, a lot of those are big buildings and you have a lot of members now. And
Hmm.
these are members who know and kind of work with each other. Now, if you guys agreed, then even staying in a somewhat populated area, you have mutual protection.
Right.
And if you plan ahead and you stage a little bit, get people kind of on board, that's where you selling it to your buddies is a good thing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the other option is, turns out you can buy properties and warehouse space and garages for not that much if they're not in town.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be in town, yeah, warehouse is kind of expensive, right? But if you want to be way out the highway in that warehouse, what is it going to cost to find something to rent? Now, you're saying, well, Chuck, it could be $2,000 a month. All right, but you and your family don't need an entire giant warehouse,
Mm-hmm.
but you and 20 of your buddies might be cool with a giant warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand some of you might say, well, why would I spend the money when I can just go take that warehouse and defend it? That's up to you. That's your own personal business. But I'm just saying, to ensure victory and be able to pre-stage supplies, know what's there, and set things up might be a lot cooler than
Right.
just planning on a fly by the seat of your pants kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, though, there is something cool about the idea of, well, I'm going to go take over the Walmart distribution center, because, man, those things are giant
Yeah.
and they have tons and tons of supplies inside that could last forever. But how could you defend a building that big? I mean, you need a lot of people. Now, there's not a lot of entrances, and you
Mm-hmm.
could lock down those garage doors and stuff, but that's something you would really need a large group to be able to really secure,
Right.
you know? And that's something, again, with the proper planning, somebody could probably pull it off. But I also would say that's something that not only would you maybe have eyes for that, I wouldn't be surprised if the government had eyes for that.
Right.
If FEMA was like, hey, we're going to go take over that thing. So you'll go try and move in, and FEMA's going to roll in 2 minutes later and be like, oh no. And
Mm-hmm.
turns out they have more guns that you paid for.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
something to watch
You
out
bought them
for.
all sorts of cool stuff. Yeah. And the other thing is a lot of those places are well known by a lot of truckers.
Yes.
There's a good likelihood that a trucker and his family is going to be there before you are.
And the trucker's going to be there when the shit hits
Right.
the fan. He's already there.
Yeah.
He's there loading up or hooking up or waiting for his next load, and he's ready. It's something to be aware of. It's an awesome resource that you don't want to let just disappear. But on the flip side, it's something you're going to have to realize there's going to be a whole lot of competition, including the government with helicopters and guns.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to keep in mind there.
Yeah. Another one that I don't think comes up very often is it. Well, I mean, it comes up, but I don't think a lot of people think about it in that sense. Is there's a lot of abandoned buildings, a lot of abandoned warehouses, and do you remember we did a show about? I can't remember his actual name. Dr. Chaos.
Yes,
It was a while back. Yeah. His thing was urban exploration. He was really into that.
Yeah.
Breaking into old buildings, finding, basements that connected to other things and subway stations and utility access tunnels and things like that. And he was wanted by the police for several years. And he was just living in abandoned buildings and had, secret lairs and all sorts of stuff like that.
And I gotta say, definitely Chicago. He was in Chicago for a good part of it, correct?
Right. He moved to Chicago when the police started coming after him. Yeah.
Right. But if New York City, Chicago, these cities have huge underground systems, and there are a lot of closed off sections that people
Mhm.
might not know about. You think of that whole Guy Fawkes Day thing, and they
Right.
were all working in the tunnels. And there's a lot of cool stuff down there, and there's a lot of stuff that nobody knows about anymore. And
Mhm.
if you again started to plan ahead, and to be honest, it's even a place where you could pre-stage some stuff.
Right. And the truth is, if you're like going through looking for stuff like that, going through old abandoned buildings and things like that, and the police do catch you when it's not, an emergency, it's just like trespassing. It's not even like a real crime. they might tell you to leave and you just leave. It's not even a big deal.
Hey, you can't be here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. My bad. Because it turns out the courts are overwhelmed with nonsense that they
Hmm.
don't really have time for the little things.
Right.
Oh, this unused empty room? How dare you? It's like,
Hmm.
yeah. They're
I
too
saw
worried
a.
videotaping in town hall trying to, doing these whatever, First Amendment checks or whatever it is they call it.
Hmm. Yeah, I saw an article recently about a guy that they had found that had been living in an old mall, like an active mall, like with stores, where people actually go to, but it was just a section that he had walled off and had one door with his own key that he made up, and just had free water and electricity and free rent.
Well,
You
how
know,
many people just plug the extension cord into their neighbor's house and they don't even notice it?
you got to spray paint that orange cord green so you
It's spray painted
slide it
green.
through the grass. You're
Maybe you
fine,
bury
man.
it 2 inches,
Uh,
You go 2 inches, you don't have to call
I
before
think we
you
did a
dig.
show a while back about stealing electricity. So I mean, maybe check that out.
I had a buddy of mine is an electrician in Poughkeepsie there, and the actual power company called them out and was like, "Hey, you got to come over. We think you did something shady." And it's funny because they were just messing with him and thought it was funny because
Hmm.
it was just something everybody wanted to see. Somebody went out, took a copper wire, wrapped it around a nail and a hammer and a nail and banged it right into the power line above the meter. Just
Oof.
right into it. And they had that bare copper wire just right out of it. And then, it's insulated away, but you had a nail and about 2 inches of copper wire just sitting there. And we're like, holy shit, who would be ballsy enough
Yeah.
to think,
That
hey, I'm going
seems
to
like a
bang a
really
nail
good
into
way
a
to kill
power line?
yourself.
And they were like, did you do this? And he was like, yeah, that's what
Yeah. Yeah, I had a friend of mine that told me his dad always used to he had those locks that they uh put on the utility boxes
yeah,
outside his house. And he would
little
open
clips
it
or
up
whatever.
every month, and he would turn it back, so he was paying almost no electricity. And then but one time he hit two things with the same screwdriver, and it shorted the whole thing out.
Hey, shut down the town. Huh?
So he took a baseball bat and smashed it off the side of his house, and then called the electric company and said some kids did it. He said
Damn
he still
kids.
had to pay for it, and it ended up costing him a lot more money than
It
he would have
wouldn't be
spent on the
safe.
electric
Yeah,
bill every month.
yeah, yeah. That's the thing. So one of the things, if your plan is, hey, I'm going to go to this remote location, I'm going to go to the warehouse, I'm going to go somewhere. Maybe you and your buddies invest in something cool like a deuce and a half.
Hmm.
Load it up. You could do something like that. Now, obviously, the more budget friendly version would be to buy like an old school bus. There's something called schoolies, a bunch of weird people that are into, resto modding
Right.
their
Hmm.
old buses, and you can buy buses for like 2 grand. And not to plug anything, but maybe you have a Cummins in that school bus.
Maybe.
I'm just saying,
Maybe.
something that's actually going to work. And you want to redo that school bus and fill it up with water, fill it up with all these things to be able to bug out. But again, that might be outside every man's budget, but maybe it's not outside you and five families budget. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? If
Right.
everybody's like, hey, look, we'll all chip in $500 and we'll all put in a weekend worth of work of getting it ready, and then over time we'll start to add some supplies to it. And maybe you drive out to your middle of nowhere, and then you unload it, you guys live in the bus, and you have all your supplies there. I mean, that's
Hmm.
an option. Now, one, you have to count on it being somewhere you're going to be able to get to,
Right.
which it depends on the type of apocalypse that you're preparing for, because there are certain ones where driving 20 or 30 miles is going to be a big deal or possibly impossible.
Hmm.
So you need to have the plan of how am I going to get me and my family there? That's one of the biggest things of why we always discourage bugging out, is because how are you going to get there? You need to realize that it's not always that easy when the highways are, blocked with traffic. Imagine trying to get out of LA at,
Right.
when things are going bad. Just assume cars are working totally fine, but the power goes out and all those street lights stop working. Can you
Hmm.
do it? And then I would add in there, everybody has electric cars. How long can they sit in traffic? And then does that hold up everybody else? I understand
Right.
you may have the gas car, but they don't.
Hmm.
Maybe having a dirt bike or the electric scooter, whatever, that kind of thing, you might have your option out of the city where you can go a little bit. But also the electric scooter, are you going to be able to go off road? And then is somebody going to hit you with a baseball bat and take you off that bike?
Because
I
I
don't
want
know,
that electric scooter.
because they might want that electric scooter. And that's always, people are like, well, that's my plan. I'm going to have my gun and be like, get out of that cool car. I'm going to take it.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's not really a good plan. And
It's a
that
good way to get
might
shot.
be a dirt bag.
Yeah.
It's whatever. You do
But there
you.
are a lot of dirt bags out there, you know?
So you do you. Now, another thing to consider, what about boats? Boats and barges.
Hmm.
They're an excellent option. Because you have security. Now, I gotta say, a barge is not really something you can escape from pirates in, right?
Right.
You're not gonna just zip right out of there when they show up in their speedboat with the 50 cal and you know,
Hmm.
so you need to be sure you can defend yourself. I would say if you have your own 50 cal, even if it's not full auto, if you can, you have the Barrett and you can take that mile shot at the guy coming with a 50 cal
Hmm.
bullet, you might be able to defend from pirates. I'm just saying. I mean, I got to say, if I had one of these big container ships that we see going down the ocean and getting robbed all the time,
Yeah.
I was just watching a video and they were talking about the insurance. They said that if you have like a $5 million load, you're paying about 500,000 in insurance to run that ship each trip,
Hmm.
and that's why the cost of goods is going up because of pirates. That's
Right.
how crazy it is. But I got to say, if you had a 50 cal on that boat, you're going against most of those ribs or whatever. You're putting them down before they get to you.
Hmm.
Now, one of the big things is people wait until they come right to them before, because you can't just go shooting at boats. Oh, there's a boat over there. I'm gonna
Yeah, it's
shoot.
coming towards us.
We
Let's
may
kill
as well
everybody.
shoot it. They always wait. Like, we got to be sure that it's guys with machetes, before we start shooting. But,
Hmm.
maybe you get better binoculars. I'm not sure how it works exactly.
Yeah.
But
And I
there
mean,
are,
barges are great because they're generally made out of steel hull,
right.
and a lot of storage space in them. That's what
I,
they're used for.
I saw this one made out of 55-gallon drums called the Jellyfish Barge Project or something. And if you search that out, it's pretty cool. They use probably toxic waste containers or something and then put a
Hmm.
little greenhouse on it or something. I'm not sure you need to use toxic waste containers, but that's how I imagine it in my mind. You um, but there are a lot of different things that you could set up a barge and have water containers on there. And I gotta say, they're not that expensive, a barge, if you plan
Yeah.
it out. And again, that's something you and a couple of people could put together for a reasonable budget. And again, it depends, how much of your budget do you allocate towards, prepping? And you decide. Again, it's how much do you want to live your life enjoying it now, and how much do you want to be prepared against the rare chance that things go bad.
Right.
And you got to weigh as a prepper what type of risks versus what you're willing to give up now. And that's like always my big theme. Like, I'm like, all right, look, I'm going to buy all this long-term food. Well, one, it's going to help because I'm fighting inflation right now. I already
Hmm.
bought stuff and that's going to help out. But that's the same thing that, you know, it may be prepper stuff, like people buy a bunch of camping gear and life straws and little camp stoves and whatever. And if you go camping, that's awesome and you should have it. And
Right.
honestly, I mean, a life straw or something that could be a very small part of your budget, right? That's
Hmm.
not,
Yeah,
a
you're
big
not breaking the
deal,
bank on that.
right? You're not breaking the bank, but you need to weigh, is that something that's a consumable that I'm going to actually use? Or is that something that I'm going to, not ever touch, and it's just going to sit there, and then my kids are going to inherit all that's left of my stuff, and they're
Right.
gonna be like, this is garbage, and throw it out.
Throw all this
You
shit
know,
out. Yep.
it's a gamble, you know?
Yeah. Now, another couple other things that are good about boats that are, positive stuff. Um,
Yes.
one, it's great for escaping fires. Um, sailboat, obviously wind powered. You don't need to have big amount of fuel if you're on something like that. You've got close proximity to food and water. I mean, obviously, if you're in the ocean, you don't have access to water, but fishing and things like that. And
Right.
honestly, a lot of
And
rivers in the United States, I wouldn't
right.
wouldn't
And
drink that water without treating it
right.
either.
Right. There are great desalinization systems that you can do for a boat, but it's a budget and a plan that you have to put into a place,
Hmm.
beforehand. And yeah, they're not a super cheap option. And that's the thing. I got to say, when you go down in the marina and think, oh, there's hundreds of boats I can go pick out, a lot of them are gas powered, or
Yeah.
diesel, right? You're not going to
Hmm.
walk up and find a lot of sailboats anymore. They're not
No.
as much the big thing. You got to plan. You gotta buy your own boat, and then you gotta protect it and make sure it's gonna be there when you show up.
Hmm.
That was always the thing. How do you get off New York City? And people are like, "Ooh, the bridges and tunnels are just clogged up in an emergency." And sometimes the government even shuts them down. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, September 11th. I mean, I think of big emergencies, and the government was like, "Nope, screw you, you're stuck." And
Right.
but boats and stuff are another way off the island, that you could do.
Hmm.
It's just something to think about. If you want to dig into boats, we actually did a whole episode that's great. I'll put a link in the show notes so you guys can dig it up and check that out, because we really go hard into setting up your boat and security and dealing with pirates. But that's one option. Like I said, warehouses, your big food stockpile warehouses, but buying a car garage or a shop and making it a wood shop that you use, or doing something with your buddies. You can have multi-purpose, where it's not just a big junky thing that, oh, we stored some supplies there and we have a warehouse in the middle of nowhere. Maybe it's
Hmm.
where you and your buddies go stand and drink beer like King of the Hill, and
Hmm.
you go work on cars together. You can multi-purpose things where it's part of your entertainment and part of your prepping plan.
Right.
Maybe you set up a wood shop and you work on, building furniture with whatever. Like, I don't know what you do for fun, but I feel like there's ways you can incorporate these things. It doesn't have to be, well, I spent all this money on this, and now I have to spend all this money on other stuff. You can
Hmm.
combine these projects. Another thing I've been thinking about, like, I'm big on having land and farming and getting off grid and like that. Now, mind you, I'm not like, I don't have even solar panels and stuff. I still can't make sense that they are a good investment. I have
Well,
solar panels for like small scale to get me
right.
electricity for the apocalypse, right? For what I
Hmm.
want, but I don't run my house off solar. I
Right.
have a well pump that runs off solar, just because I was like, man, that's an awesome prepper option.
Hmm.
Now I have water and it comes out. I don't even have to pump it, and it's easy. And I have
Yeah.
it, backup charge controllers and things like that, so that I can deal with, if there was an EMP or stuff like that. I have those set aside in a safe place, but that doesn't have to be the thing. But for I know around here, I always see in the budget, and people tell me, well, when you go to do it, that's not the reality. But I basically see ads where for about 30 grand, you can have a pretty good metal outbuilding that's
Hmm.
awesome on your farmer property. So it's basically around here, 30 by 40, you'd pay like 10 grand for a foundation, for just concrete slab.
Right.
And then I see about 18 to 20,000. Somebody will come put up your metal building with doors and windows. Now we're
Hmm.
talking about a shell with no insulation, but now you have somewhere you can go store stuff. You can stockpile stuff, and you have a roof over your head. That could be great for you and your buddies. Now,
Hmm.
here's where step two, you're saying, well, Chuck, I live in the city. That's why I'm talking about bugging out. If I had a big farm, I wouldn't be moving and bugging out. That's okay. I
Hmm.
got a plan for you. How about when you're around, you find something that's accessible far and secluded enough away. I mean, that's the thing. You have to judge the balance of, how quick are you willing to walk away from your job and go out to the country, or can you take 2 days off or whatever? But you find how far and how safe, because obviously the more remote you are, the better your survival odds are going to be, right? But
Mhm.
just the same,
But the
you got to
further you
be
have
able
to
to get
travel.
there, right? And
Right.
you have to balance that. That's a whole separate, discussion. But you find the farm or the land, and you work together with your buddies and either buy some land and throw up a metal building like this to secure your supplies, or part two, you go find one of these places and you go talk to the farmer and say, hey, look, I plan on surviving the apocalypse. I worry about these things. These are my concerns. How cool would you let me put up a building on your property and store some stuff here? Or, but here's the benefit, I'm going to have my own supplies, and we're going to have mutual security, right?
Mhm.
And I'm only going to, have access to my building to put stuff in there. You guys can work together of, hey, you can use this for hay storage, or you can use this for whatever, as long as, I have this section for my supply storage and I get to whatever. And he might be cool with that.
Mhm.
That's not actually an impossible thing. Now, maybe you're saying, all right, but I'm not buying a 30 grand building for somebody else. Okay, maybe that's your plan. No problem. What if I have a schoolie bus that I drive out there, or my camping gear, and I work out that, hey, look, if things go bad, I bet you if you talk to enough people that you could find a guy who's like, you know what, if you show up with your own supplies and you're willing to work on mutual security and you're willing to help garden and farm and run security for my property, if things went bad, I would be happy to work with you.
Mhm.
I mean, again, if
Right.
you're an asshole, probably not going to work out. Like the guy's going to meet you and go, no, I don't think so, buddy.
Yeah.
But
I
if you're a
mean,
cool,
honestly,
friendly
we're
guy,
talking about 90% of our listeners, but
well, I mean me, but I know you didn't want to come out and say it,
right.
but that's the thing. But you could work these deals. Now, the deal might not work with the first guy. And I bet you if you went to some of these farming things, and the cool thing is you could go into the local farm feed store, that kind of stuff in a small town. And if you
Mhm.
said, hey, look, this is what I'm looking for. Do you know anybody that I should maybe talk to? And they might say, hey, you know what? Farmer so and so, you might want to talk to him. And I know that sounds crazy and far fetched, but you got to think outside the box a little bit. And I got to say, as a prepper, you're already kind of thinking outside the box a little bit.
Mhm. Right.
And,
Right.
this is not an impossible plan.
Mhm.
You really could set something up to utilize somebody else's land, but you can't be like, I'm just going to show up. But if you broker this deal in advance, I bet you it's no problem. I bet you, I mean, I would be down for that. Hey, mutual security. I'm going to show up, but I'm going to bring my own supplies. And then you have to have a plan to bring your own supplies, right?
Right.
And maybe you're going to stage some there. Hey, look, you have 100 acres, 20 acres, 10 acres, whatever seems
Mhm.
big to you that's reasonable and whatever. Can I put a 10 by 10 metal shed out there and go out and, or one of these, Amish built 10 grand little things they drop out there, right? Or you see
Mhm.
them used all the time around here. I don't know, you probably don't see them when you live in the city, but when you live in the country like me, I see those buildings for sale for like 4 grand, 5 grand. Hey, I
Mhm.
have this old shed. Some I see for free if you can come and get it.
Right.
They're like, all right, we're done with it. Can you, whatever. Even I think you can go to Lowe's and for like $7.99 you can buy a plastic shed that's just a couple
Mhm.
of pieces that clip together
Yep.
and they go out there. I have one in my backyard. I didn't buy it. It came with the property.
Mhm.
And I was like, all the bikes and crap that I'm never going to touch again in my life, but I feel wrong throwing out in
Uh-huh.
that plastic shed. Now I even noticed it. I just cut a spot out of the weeds in the woods and set it in there. And I was like, done.
Yeah.
I had to stick a log under one end so it wasn't too crooked and coming apart.
Mhm.
But aside of that, that was it. I put up that little plastic shed. If I went out there with a caulk gun and really cared, I could load that up with supplies. I could make it mouse proof and I could, really close it up and do
Right.
that. And I could put things in Tupperware and I could have supplies. Again, if I had an extra one of those on my property with somebody's supplies, but they were like, hey, but I'm going to come out here when things get bad, that wouldn't bother me. Because one, if you don't show up, that's a win for me because I just got all kinds of cool supplies for the apocalypse. Or two, if you do show up, I have somebody I can trust who's another gun who can stand watch and help farm.
Mhm.
So I don't see anybody not liking that scenario. And they might even like, hey, you know, I think you're crazy, but it covers the downside. I have to do a whole lot less prepping because I have a guy who's spending all his time learning survival skills, learning to be prepared, who is going to show up and help me out. Now,
Mhm.
again, you might not show up, but if you do, it's a win. And if you don't,
Mhm.
I get your supplies and it's a win. I,
Right.
I don't see this being that hard of a sell to a farmer. To me,
Mhm.
this is like the best plan that I see. Now, Kevin, you also said that caves might be an option when we were talking.
Yeah, yeah. So I saw a couple of people have posted stuff about, caves and mines and things like that. And we have actually quite a few caves around this area, and I've
Do,
done
yeah.
my fair share of spelunking. And be honest with you, I can't think of one cave that I'd really want to spend more than a few hours in. That's all wet
No.
and disgusting. And but listen, if you're riding out a big storm, might be a great spot to be. Um, and it's safe. It's safe from the elements. It's you know gonna keep anybody from shooting at you unless they get in there with you. Um, one of the ones that I see a lot of people. I don't think it would be the ideal location because I think a lot of people would think about it. But state and national parks have a lot of land, and if you have the appropriate camping gear, you could probably spend quite a bit of time out there. If you can find access to water, you might be able to spend 2-3 weeks out there without even having to interact with anybody. Um, And one of the other ones that I thought about, I see these a lot in my area, and probably a lot of areas around the country. There's a lot of abandoned train cars. We have some abandoned tracks around us, and there's just you know they stopped there, and that's as far as it went, and it never moved again. You
And
know?
it's cool. Yeah, that we used to hang out like as a kid. I don't know if this world exists anymore. I don't know if the price of scrap metal is too high or whatever. But I know when I was a kid, we used to go in the woods and there'd be passenger cars all through
Hmm.
the woods that we could just go in and terrorize and,
Right.
whatever. So yeah, could you go hang out in those? Probably. I know by Kevin, there's an old hotel that's burned down up at the top of a mountain. And you could go up there, you can see a million miles. It's got awesome wall structures, and you could really build something there and set up some kind of roof system and build something pretty
Hmm.
cool. Now, my guess is a few other people have that same idea. So you may have problems, but I don't know. A lot of people don't want to hike supplies up in the woods.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
kind of is like effort.
Yeah. When we're
Or
talking
maybe if
about
you hike up supplies, I'll come take them from you. That might be the
yeah, we
plan. I don't
we
know.
I was actually doing some hiking a couple years back in an area up by me, and I thought it was like really cool bug out location because you can see from the top of the hill there,
Yeah.
you can see the whole river. What any ships coming up and down the river, and then down a little ways is a lake, with fish in it, and it was a bit of a hike to get up there. It's like difficult access. It's not easy to get up there. And then I found out, I did some reading about it during the French and Indian War. The Indians, that was like their fortress, their mountain fortress. And I was like, oh, they
Nice.
picked some cool spots. They
Right.
can see any ships coming and going, and they would take their prisoners up there and just chill out until they wanted to trade somebody for something else.
Yeah.
Um, but there are a lot of locations like that. Not every place in the national and state forests is going to be a great location like that. You know what I mean? You want to be able to have access. If you can fish in a lake out there, that's 100 times better. Fresh
Oh, all
fish,
day.
even if a couple of times a week, it's going to really help subsidize your food.
Right. Now, another thing I would point out though I mean, one, there are going to be pirates out there if you go for the whole boat thing. But any of these options, don't think that you're going to run out and do it and without any planning. If you don't know how to sail a boat, don't have hijacking a
Yeah.
sailboat as your plan, right? That's
Uh-huh.
not the go-to. And I'd assume that if you bought a sailboat, then you would actually know how to sail it. Like that's
Right.
a thing for I don't know. Also having it at dry dock somewhere and not being able to get it in the water might be a problem. Now, if you got a trailer in your backyard and you're like, "Hey, I have river access that it can get me out to the ocean in 10 minutes
Mhm.
and I can just, well, I mean, maybe you're in the water in 10 minutes and then an hour or an hour and a half driving up the Hudson River to the ocean, you might be cool, right? That's what Kevin's option might be, right? And
Mhm.
then you go sail away, right? He's an experienced Navy sailor, so obviously he can sail a boat. That's what
Uh-huh.
I
Obviously,
would
yeah.
say, obviously, right? But that might be your plan, but don't assume you can go do it. But the same thing, don't go to the farmer and say, "Yeah, I'm going to help you," unless you're bringing something to the table, right?
Right.
Hey, I may not be excellent at farming, but I'm willing to go out and shovel and do dirt and move things all day, and I can do what I'm told. But I'm handy with a gun, and
Mhm.
I really can provide security. I understand security. I understand foraging. I understand hunting. Whatever you bring to the table, just make sure you're bringing something to the table, or these plans might not exactly work. If
Mhm.
you're like the lawyer, and again, if you're the lawyer who has no skills and ability because you don't go outside other than, to your car in the morning, and not that that's what lawyers do. Some lawyers might be into hunting and fishing and whatever. Like,
Mhm.
that's what I'm saying. Develop other skills, right? But if you don't have any of these skills, then maybe you need to bring a lot of money to the table, right? Hey, but I
Right.
have all these supplies.
Mhm.
It's always one of those things, time or money, right? That's what they always
Right.
say. So you spend time developing skills and become a useful bushcraft guy or a useful security expert, or you bring money to the table of, "Hey, I'm going to bring all these supplies, everything's going to be great." That's the
Mhm.
thing. You need to decide what the best plan is, and you need to bring something to the table. But thinking ahead is what's going to save your butt when these things go down. Um, like I said, having a plan with a farmer, going and talking to somebody and saying, "Hey, can I come out here? Can I be your buddy?" That's what's going to, set you apart. That's what's
Mhm.
going to really, you know, get you the deal, the situation that you want. And I think that's honestly your best play. I did see um one of the other guys, I don't even remember which one. One of the videos I watched on YouTube yesterday was had fleethecity.com, and it was somewhere in like South Dakota where a group, they kind of help you plan and come up with a thing on your own, and they actually, kind of scope out how to set up an escape plan for you. So maybe that's option. You know what? Maybe we set up a Facebook group. I'll put a link into it, and we kind of set something up where you can kind of network with farmers who might have options. And I
Mhm.
feel like nobody ever goes to those things. I don't know. Would that be something people are interested in? Here's what we do in the Prepping Badass group. We'll add a little chat room. If you guys are like, hey, if you guys are looking for a place to bug out in whatever state, get in touch with me and I'd be interested in, if you
Mhm.
pre-stage equipment, you get to set your own criteria. Turns out, like I said, money or time, right? So if you have the land and the great farm, you've already committed to an off-grid, survival kind of situation. You guys can come out and hang out with me. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I
and
mean,
that thing, but you're
it's
bringing
fine to
something.
have those types of stipulations, ass,
Yeah,
grass, or gas,
exactly.
bring something to the
And
table.
that's it. I mean, I don't know what you look like. Maybe it's something, that you can work it out. But
Yeah,
that's
see,
the
me
whole thing.
personally, I'm cute,
Right.
I'm
Kevin's
girls
bringing
know
something
I'm
to
a
the table.
snack, bro.
That's what Kevin's bringing to the table, basically. What
Uh,
you see is what you get.
yep. My good
So,
looks and charm.
Kevin, it's an ugly world. So anyway, that's what I got. I mean, there's a lot of different options, RVs, buses, that kind of thing. Like I said, staging something like a bus or a dually, something like that. Again, in my plans, that would be something that's going to run where after an EMP or a solar flare, maybe you go to empshield.com, code badass, save $50. You could, end up setting up your regular, vehicle to be able to drive after things go bad. That's a cool option, right? You need to think, or something old and diesel, that old deuce and a half from the 70s, that's going to run just fine without EMP shield. You
Hmm.
do the thing. A new bus, probably not going to go, but one of your old school, 1960s, 70s, even 80s school bus, you'd probably be all right. You need to
Hmm.
check out what you're dealing with the electrical system and see what your options are. But anyway, you want to come up with a plan that's going to work for you. There's a lot of great things out there. But like I said, warehouses, distribution centers, you want to be careful because you got to be able to defend it. So you're going to need 20 or 30 guys with guns who know how to use them if you're going to take some of these bigger places in town. Buying your
Right.
own warehouse out of town, you and five guys might be able, five shooters, right? I'm not saying guys or women can do it, whatever. It's you need five shooters who are capable of defending something. And
Hmm.
you might be able to defend a small little thing, or you could go secret and go cave or something. We always, like we just discussed, they're wet, they're damp, they're gross in caves, but it's an option. So anyway, that's what I got. Um, Kevin, anything else exciting? We're good.
That's it.
All right. So with that, I would say stay safe. Look out for each other, and we will talk to you guys next week.